They say this is like one of the most horrific cases the police have ever had to deal with. A 5-year-old girl vanishes, straight from her own bed in the middle of the night. There were 2 other people in the room with her. The only adult witness, well, it was her father's 17-year-old girlfriend, who swears up down she heard absolutely nothing. Then there was her 3-year-old brother. But what this little boy told the police about that night, it literally made the blood run cold for even the most seasoned detectives. Hey everyone, it's me again, Dwight. Before we get into this story, I've got a quick favor to ask. If you're not already with us, go ahead, hit that subscribe button so you don't miss a thing. All right, now for our usual roll call. Let me know in the comments where you're watching from, what time it is, where you are, plus what you've got going on outside your window. So, this story unfolds in a place called Satsuma, Florida. Now, when you hear Florida, you probably picture Miami, beaches, Disneyland. You can just forget all about that. This is a totally different Florida. This is, deep rural country, the kind of place they call old Florida. You've got these dense woods with hanging oak trees plus slow, dark rivers. The main thing to do here is fishing, not lounging on the beach. They even call this region the bass capital of the world. The town actually got its name from the Satsuma tangerine, which they used to grow here commercially. It was a huge business until a couple of hard freezes wiped out pretty much all the groves. So basically, a whole industry just vanished, leaving only the name on the map. Here's the thing I've noticed about little towns like this. It feels like everybody knows everybody else's business, but for real, it's in that kind of quiet that secrets are easiest to keep. This little girl ended up right in the middle of one of those hidden, rotten secrets. Her name was Holly Ann Marie Cummings. She was born on August 17th, 2003 to Ronald Cummings with Crystal Sheffield. Holly was their first child together. Less than 2 years later, they had a son, Ronald Jr., who everyone just called Junior. Holly also had a half-brother, but he didn't live with them, resulting in very little being known about him. To really get what happened to little Holly, you first have to understand her family, or more specifically, her parents, Ronald plus Crystal. I gotta say, their relationship from the very beginning was, to put it mildly, complicated. They weren't married, there was an 8-year age gap between them. Then, on top of all that, Crystal was only 17 when she had Holly. Sometimes these stories have a happy ending, with the young parents building a wonderful family. But unfortunately, this wasn't one of those cases. Get this. Crystal was only 14 years old when she first met Ronald. One weekend, she went to visit his family, then just never came home. A 14-year-old girl, she dropped out of school before even finishing the 9th grade, choosing to stay there living with him. Then a few years later, Holly was born. When the little girl was born, it turned out she had some health issues. Doctors diagnosed her with Turner syndrome. If you don't know what that is, it's a rare chromosomal condition that only affects girls. Someone with this diagnosis is missing part of an X chromosome, which can cause a whole range of complications. Heart problems, developmental delays, short stature, also learning difficulties. What this means is the child needs constant, really careful medical supervision. In Holly's case, this meant monthly visits to an endocrinologist for hormone therapy, as well as to a cardiologist to monitor her heart. So right here is where you see the first, major red flag. By the time Holly was 3 years old, her parents had already missed about a dozen of these vital doctor's appointments. Usually when a child has special needs, the parents are, if anything, overly worried, doing everything possible to never miss a single appointment. But that wasn't even the half of it. One time, something truly chilling happened. Little Holly was found in a ditch full of water, lying no signs of life. It became obvious that Holly plus her brother Junior were not getting the care they needed. After that incident, the Child Protective Services Department got involved. Crystal with Ronald finally split for good, which kicked off a really ugly custody battle. In court, Ronald claimed Crystal was a bad mother because she was a but Crystal had her own much more terrifying version of events. She admitted to using heavy illegal substances, but alleged that Ronald had forced her into it. According to her, in addition to other family members, Ronald was a violent, impulsive person who also dealt illegal substances. She recounted how when she got pregnant, then wanted to stop, he would kick her, also punch her in the head, forcing her to continue. It was this incredibly messy court case with accusations just flying from both sides. So, after all this horrific testimony, the court made a decision. It was a decision that surprised a lot of people. The judge sided with Ronald. Why? Well, the logic was purely pragmatic. Ronald had a job. Sure, it only paid $10 an hour, but it was steady. Most importantly, it provided health benefits. Crystal, on the other hand, was unemployed at the time. for the court, that piece of paper about employment turned out to be more important than all the allegations of abuse. Ronald was granted primary custody, while Crystal was only allowed to see the children once every 2 weeks. All right, so this situation went on for years. Ronald had full custody of the kids, leaving Crystal to see them just twice a month. Basically, the system kind of worked. Now let's talk a little more about Holly herself. In February of 2009, Haley was a typical happy 5-year-old girl. She went to kindergarten at the local elementary school. Her favorite food was macaroni with cheese, plus she loved playing games on her laptop. Like a lot of girls her age, she loved playing with makeup, watching cartoons, in addition to spending time with her dad. She was living in a mobile home that Ronald was renting with his new girlfriend. They lived in the tight-knit rural community of Satsuma, Florida. You have to understand, Satsuma is a tiny little town in Putnam County where honestly not much really happens. With a population of less than 6,000 people, it has this community vibe where everyone knows everyone, surrounded by nothing but nature plus peace. So then, on February 9th, 2009, Ronald went to work his night shift at a steel plant. He left the kids, Holly, alongside Junior, in the care of his girlfriend, Misty Crosland. Ronald, with Misty, hadn't been together for very long at all. He'd met her just a few months earlier at the bus stop where Holly got picked up for school. Interestingly enough, they met because Misty was, at the time, the babysitter for Ronald's other son, the one with special needs. It was actually Misty who advised Ronald to try to get full custody of that boy too, telling him the mother was using illegal substances, leaving the child with irresponsible people. Ronald's relationship with Misty developed really, really fast. First, she became a babysitter for Holly plus Junior. Then pretty soon after, they started dating. So here again, just like with Haley's mother, you have a significant age difference. Ronald was 25, while Misty was only 17. A 17-year-old girl. She's at a totally different developmental stage than a 25-year-old man. Basically, she was still a kid herself. At this young age, Misty had like a rebellious streak. She dropped out of school after the 6th grade, even ran away from home once, buying a bus ticket to New Jersey under a fake name. Just before February 9th that weekend, Misty left home, went on a bit of a bender, you could say. She was drinking, using illegal substances, then cheated on Ronald. He was furious. He tried to talk to her, but she kept avoiding him. Finally, Ronald's patience just snapped. He gathered up all her things, drove them over to her friend's house, then just threw them out on the lawn. But on February 9th, right before Ronald had to leave for work, Misty came back. He was still angry, but there was no time to sort things out, so he just left her there to watch the kids. After he left, Misty spent the evening with the children. An air conditioner repairman stopped by for a little while. Then, Ronald's grandmother, Haley's great-grandmother, Annette Sykes, came over. She brought over some kids' clothes from the previous weekend when the children had stayed with her because Misty had taken off. When Annette arrived, she saw Misty sitting on the porch with the kids eating hamburgers. She told Misty to dress the kids warmer, then left shortly after. A little later, Misty's older brother, 23-year-old Tommy, came by. They sat on the porch together while the kids were inside the house. After Tommy left, Misty put on the movies Air Bud alongside Madagascar for the kids. They watched them together, all wrapped up in a blanket. Around 8:15 p.m., she put them to bed, because Holly had school in the morning. Sometime after 10 p.m., Misty went to bed herself in the same room where the kids were sleeping. Then, around 3 a.m., she woke up to use the bathroom. She didn't use the bathroom in the bedroom, but went to the guest one instead. At that moment, Misty noticed the kitchen light was on, plus the side door, the one by the washing machine, was propped open from the outside with a cinder block. She went to check on the kids, searched the whole house, but couldn't find Holly. Here's the thing. Misty didn't call 911 until 3:27 a.m., which was, right when Ronald got home from work. When she finally made the call, the operator heard Misty barely holding back panic, saying she couldn't find her daughter, that she had just woken up to find the back door wide open. It's a strange detail, considering they'd only known each other for a few months. Maybe she said it because it was simpler than explaining who she was, or maybe she really saw herself in a motherly role. In the background of her call, you could hear Ronald frantically screaming Holly's name. On the other end of the line, the dispatcher, trying to calm the situation, told Misty to reassure the man that help was already on the way. She then started asking standard questions to get a precise description of Haley for the alert. Misty was obviously panicking, trying to gather her thoughts. She described Holly as not very tall, with long curly hair. But when asked about her weight, she seemed lost, giving a really wide range, somewhere between 40 to 60 pounds. At this point, unable to take it anymore, Ronald apparently snatched the phone from Misty. His voice was just filled with rage, also desperation. He was screaming into the phone something like he needed someone there right now, that he just got home from work to find his 5-year-old daughter gone, that he needed someone there immediately. Then he said something that made the dispatcher go silent, something that's forever captured on the audio recording of that call. He told them, he was saying if he found the person who took his daughter before they did, he would. He paused, then added that he didn't care if he spent the rest of his life in prison. He told them to write it down. He just didn't care.
Said your back door was wide open?
Yes, it was brick. Like a brick on the floor. Like when I went to sleep, the door was not like that.
What is the brick?
It's on the deck, on the stairs. Like we have like a walkway.
And there was a brick laying there?
Yes, it's still there.
Was your back door locked, do you know?
Yes, but that's the only thing locked.
Man, I need somebody to get here now. I just got home from work. My 5-year-old daughter is gone. I need somebody to be here now. I'm telling you.
Listen to me. We got 2 officers.
If I find whoever has my daughter before y'all do, I don't care. I'll spend the rest of my life in prison. I'm telling you, you can put it on record and I don't care.
Of course, after Ronald just slammed the phone down like that, the dispatcher immediately called back. It's standard procedure, you know? In these situations, the main thing is to keep the line open, remaining on the call until patrol officers arrive. When Ronald picked up, he was in even worse shape. It wasn't just rage anymore, but full-blown hysterics. He was sobbing into the phone, his speech punctuated by cursing. The dispatcher tried to calm him down, asked him to stay on the line, but it was obvious Ronald wasn't listening to anyone anymore. Then, right before the line went dead again, he screamed something that just showed all his desperation, his complete distrust of the police in that moment. He yelled for them to give him his damn phone back, saying they had better people to call for help than some useless cops who weren't going to show up anyway.
Tell him we got him coming. He needs to try to calm down a little bit, okay? The officers are going to come out there and do what they can. We can't have him screaming and yelling at the officers whenever they get there, okay?
You got better people to talk to than the it ain't coming.
All right. So after that 911 call where Ronald threatened to kidnap her, he hung up the phone. The very first thing he did in his panic was call his grandmother, Annette. All she heard on the other end was her grandson's frantic screaming, just yelling that his baby was gone, telling her to get over there because someone had taken his child. So at 3:40 a.m., the first patrol car pulls up to the mobile home. The scene the officers walk into is just total chaos. Ronald isn't inside. He's out in the street, completely out of his mind. He's screaming, sobbing, also punching the walls with all his might, hitting the car, anything he can get his hands on. So hard that the skin on his knuckles is scraped raw, bleeding. This whole time, he's just screaming at Misty, who's standing right there, demanding an answer to the same question over what happened to Holly? One of the sheriff's deputies approached Ronald, trying to calm him down. In his report, he would later write that Ronald claimed his dumbass girlfriend was the one who told him his daughter was missing. Ronald was absolutely certain about one thing. Holly would never have left the house on her own. Even more importantly, he insisted that when he left for work, he had locked the door with a deadbolt, one a little 5-year-old girl would be physically unable to open. So this presented detectives with a dilemma, one I'm sure no cop ever wants to face. The only witness was Holly's 3-year-old brother, Junior. When they spoke to him gently, the little boy said he saw a man in black come into the room, then take Holly while she was sleeping. You know, on one hand, it's a child's testimony. It could be a fantasy, it could be a dream. But on the other hand, what if it was true? The police found zero evidence to back up his story, but they couldn't just ignore it completely either. A search began immediately. Police officers with search dogs combed the entire area, moving toward the St. Johns River, which was only about a quarter of a mile away. But there were no signs of her. Around 9:30 a.m., authorities issued a yellow alert, which is the local version of the nationwide Amber Alert. This alert included new details that Misty, for some reason, hadn't mentioned during the 911 call. Haley had pierced ears plus 2 distinctive birthmarks on her body. Investigators started going door to door in the neighborhood. The situation was complicated by the fact that there were 44 registered offenders living nearby, each of whom had to be checked out. Meanwhile, Ronald with Misty were brought to the station. There, the police did something pretty clever. They put Ronald, also Misty, in an interrogation room together, turned on the camera, then just walked out, letting them talk alone. On the recording they got, Ronald is constantly grilling Misty about how she could have slept through everything without hearing a thing. He acts like a father who just cannot comprehend what happened. Misty, I gotta say, looked every bit as shocked. The very next day, February 10th, some serious players joined the case. The FBI, the Florida Department of Law Enforcement, in less than 10 hours after the 911 call, more than 200 law enforcement officers were out there searching. Her great-grandmother, Annette, along with other volunteers, weren't sitting around either. It was a massive operation. They were stopping cars. Dive teams were checking bodies of water. Helicopters scanned everything from the air, while people on horseback combed through the woods with the brush. Then, at 4 p.m., the official statement came out. Police believed Holly had been abducted. While forensics teams worked the trailer, detectives began to look deeper into Ronald's past. It turned out to be not so clean. It came out that back in 2001, he'd been arrested for making a death threat, then later a few times for possession of illegal substances. They even found a creepy parallel to Holly's story in his own childhood. He himself, as a kid, was once found wandering in the woods because a babysitter hadn't been watching him properly. His grandmother, Annette, admitted her grandson had a difficult past, but she insisted he was a good father. Investigators, however, formed their own opinion of him. They saw him as a racist, a poser. But despite all that, they didn't see him as a suspect. His alibi the night shift at the plant was rock solid. Misty's story, on the other hand, started to fall apart. She kept changing the details. First, she said the house was locked. Then, she claimed the side door was propped open with a cinder block. But when investigators examined that door, they saw a large pile of laundry lying directly in front of it. It would have been nearly impossible to get in or out without disturbing it. Then another inconsistency popped up. She told the 911 operator Holly was in her pajamas. To detectives, she said the girl was wearing a pink Hannah Montana t-shirt. Later, that very same t-shirt was found right on top of that pile of laundry by the door. There was yet another discrepancy, exactly where Holly was sleeping. At first, Misty said she got into the same bed with Holly plus Junior around 10 p.m. Then she changed her story, saying Holly was asleep in her own toddler bed, which was in the same room. Even her reason for waking up changed. First it was to use the bathroom, then it was to get a drink of water. Because of these constantly shifting stories, the full weight of suspicion started to move onto her. Once the investigation's focus narrowed in on 17-year-old Misty, they began to dig deeper. What they found painted a very complicated picture. According to her father, she'd been a difficult child. She dropped out of school back in middle school, while people who knew her described her as someone who showed almost no emotion. Police also learned that as a teenager, she had survived assault, also had even been pregnant at one point. The community split into two camps. Holly's mother, Crystal, was convinced Misty was involved in the disappearance. Ronald, alongside his family, however, defended her. To try to calm the public, Ronald with Misty announced that they had both taken polygraph tests, passing them successfully. Since they weren't allowed back in the trailer, the family set up two separate camps in a neighbor's yard. On one side of the street was Ronald Misty, his grandmother Annette. On the other side was Holly's mother Crystal with her relatives. They all wanted to be close by in case there was any news. The community actively supported them, bringing food, blankets, whatever they needed. The family of Casey Anthony even offered to help with the search, but Holly's family turned down their assistance. About a week and a half later, the story blew up on a national level. The media just descended on Satsuma. The famous host Geraldo Rivera even got a warning for trespassing while trying to film a segment. He also got into a public argument with Ronald, grilling him about his criminal past. Family members started showing up on popular talk shows like Nancy Grace to discuss their own theories. Holly's name, her face, they were everywhere. But weeks went by, hundreds of leads led to nothing, which left police still having no idea where the little girl was. Then, exactly 1 month after Holly disappeared, on March 9th, 2009, something happened that made everyone following the case just stop in their tracks. Ronald and Misty, along with a few of their family members, went out to dinner at a local Chili's restaurant. There, in the middle of dinner, Ronald took out his grandmother's diamond ring, then proposed to 17-year-old Misty. She accepted without hesitation. Since she was a minor, her parents had to give their permission for the marriage, which they did. Their engagement lasted just 3 days. That's the minimum waiting period required by Florida law. Misty, just beaming with happiness, told the media she knew people would judge their decision, but claimed it was all for Holly, also saying that Holly would have wanted them to get married. They held the ceremony in a backyard because the local church refused to marry them due to the pastor's disapproval. This decision, to put it lightly, caused a firestorm of criticism. Many volunteers plus observers just couldn't understand how you could throw a wedding while your child was still missing. But that wasn't all. After the ceremony, Ronald with Misty didn't return to the search party. Instead, the very next day, they flew to New York to appear on the Today Show. When the host asked Ronald about the inappropriate timing of the wedding, he shot back, saying that honestly, he didn't get why anyone cared, that his personal life was nobody's business. During that same interview, Misty admitted that her story had changed. But when she was asked why, she just paused for a long time, then simply said she didn't know. She also explained that she'd walked out of an interrogation because she felt investigators were treating her unfairly, trying to make her out to be a liar.
Ronald and Misty Cummings are with us exclusively this morning. Good morning to you both. Thank you for joining us. Ronald, your daughter Haley disappeared a little over a month ago, and since then, you've spoken to the media, you've taken a polygraph test, both of you have, opened up your home, what was your home, to us to see where Haley lived, give us a better sense of her. None of that could have been easy for either one of you. So why did you want to come here today? What are you hoping to accomplish, Ronald, today?
To get the focus back on my daughter is missing. My 5-year-old girl is gone, and I want to find her.
Where do you think the focus has changed when you say get the focus back on her?
I think they've changed to my personal life and being married and everything else when they should be focusing on my 5-year-old daughter.
Do you think the police have done an adequate job searching for her, Ronald? Are you comfortable with the job they have done so far?
So far.
You are?
Yes.
Have they said anything to you about any possible leads at all? Nothing. Michelle just referenced your son, your 4-year-old son, and the fact that he said that somebody, a man dressed in black, had taken Haley out of the trailer that night she disappeared. Did he tell that to either one of you? Misty, you were there at the time. Did he say anything to you at the time?
Mm-mm.
Nothing?
Nope.
Me either.
No.
I think this is some of the garbage that Geraldo and Crystal, the mother, is made of, but I'm just going to leave that at that.
Oh, so you don't even believe that Ronald Jr. said this at all?
I don't know. I wasn't at home. I was at work.
You were home.
I can't tell you honestly.
You were there, Misty, and I know when Ronald just said that the focus has been removed from his daughter, a little girl that you also care very deeply for, to other people. A lot of the focus has now been on you and the police saying that you walked out of a meeting they were having with you, walked away. Why? What happened? You stopped talking. Tell us what happened. Something must have upset you.
There was a new guy that was new to the case, and I didn't feel comfortable with him. He was just being very rude to me. And I told John Merchant and the state attorneys I would talk to them, but I wasn't going to talk to the other guy.
What was he doing? What was he saying?
He was just like being rude, like yelling and pretty much telling me I'm a liar.
So he was accusing you of lying to him?
Yeah.
Let's go back
After
through.
past polygraphs.
After passing.
You both clear. They said to you, you have passed the polygraph test.
Absolutely.
I think part of the problem has been, Misty, that there has been a certain number of inconsistencies, or what's perceived to be inconsistencies, because you first said that Haley was in bed with you, then you said she was on the mattress next to you. This is an opportunity to clarify. You've had time to think through what happened that night. Can you walk us through it one more time, Misty, your best recollection of what happened the night Haley disappeared?
Well, I put her to bed at 8 o'clock. I was washing our blankets, and after that was done, I put her blanket over her. She was sleeping when I put her blanket on her.
Was she in the bed?
She was in her bed.
Her bed? In
her bed, and Junior was in the bed with me. And it was about, I don't know what time, about 10 o'clock, I finally lay down and went to sleep. And I woke up at 3, and I noticed, I got up to use the bathroom, and I noticed the kitchen light was on, so I walked to the kitchen, and that's when I seen the back door open. So I ran back to my bedroom to grab my phone to call Ronald, and that's when I noticed Haley was gone.
And so you called Ronald, and then Ronald, did you come home?
I was pulling in the driveway.
Pulling in the driveway.
At shortly after 3 o'clock in the morning, you're saying?
Yeah, I was pulling in the driveway, just home from my shift at work.
So why were there, help me out, Misty, why were there inconsistencies? Why did you say one thing one time and one time the other? One thing the other?
I don't know.
But you know you did do that?
Yeah.
And you're not sure why?
No.
And then yesterday, you guys got married. In the midst of all this, why was that an important thing, Ronald, for you to do?
I don't know. I think that my little girl would have wanted it. I would have rather her have to have been there. So obviously, when we get her back, we will do a much larger, better wedding. But we're just that's still drawing the focus off of Haley. We need to be focused on Haley and not what I'm doing in my personal life.
But can you understand why some people might be confused by it, or do you accept that, or?
I don't understand why it's any of anybody else's business, to be honest with you. It's nobody's business what I do in my personal life. I go to work, I support my family. I don't know what my personal life has to do with national TV. My daughter is missing, that's what has to do with national TV. We need to get my daughter's face back on TV and get her found.
Of course, the public was extremely unhappy with Ronald, with Misty's decision to get married. Then on top of that, to fly to New York while the search was still going on. It just looked like a total mess. And Crystal's lawyer, Kim Picasio, had a particularly sharp reaction to their marriage plus the trip. She openly told the media that any person with common sense would find that kind of behavior just appalling. She stated that it was, to put it mildly, bizarre that he was getting married while the sheriff, also hundreds of volunteers, were out searching for his daughter. Kim's opinion pretty much completely matched what most people were thinking. People just couldn't imagine not being out on the street every single day, not doing everything humanly possible to get their child back. But Ronald chose to get married, then go to New York. Even if they felt they had to do an interview, couldn't they have just done it near their home like they had before? What was the point of the trip? So, after the wedding, the newlyweds moved into Ronald's grandmother Annette's house, even though investigators had already finished processing their trailer, giving them permission to return. But from day one, the marriage was extremely tense. Not only was Holly still missing, but Ronald seemed to be taking it incredibly hard. Annette said she would often find him on the floor, hugging a picture of Haley, crying, talking to it. Weeks went by with the wildest rumors spreading through the media. At one point, there was even a report that Holly's been found, but it later turned out the they found belonged to an alligator, not a child. The official investigation, meanwhile, seemed to have hit a dead end. Months passed since Haley's disappearance, but there were no arrests, which left law enforcement with zero leads. The sheriff on the case, Jeff Hardy, made a statement to the press. He said that while Misty wasn't officially a suspect, he was certain she knew a lot more than she was saying. According to him, the only consistent thing about her testimony was its constant inconsistency. Her story changed so often that at times it just made no sense. Then, another bombshell dropped, which pretty much destroyed any credibility Misty had left. Remember how she, along with Ronald, claimed they had passed polygraph tests? Well, it turns out that was a lie. At least, on her part. Reporters found out that Misty had actually taken not one, but 4 separate lie detector tests. She failed all of them. Every single one. She also failed a voice stress test. That's when Misty's story started to evolve in a new direction. A new name came up in the case. Misty revealed she'd been as a child by her older cousin Joe Overstreet. Very suspiciously, on February 10th, the day the news of Holly's disappearance went public, Joe suddenly left Florida, returning to his home in Tennessee. Investigators found out he was on probation at the time, which meant he wasn't allowed to leave the state. They also learned that on the day he left, the car he was in with a friend was searched at a checkpoint. Holly wasn't found inside, so they let him go, initially ruling him out as a suspect. But his name kept coming up, so he hired a lawyer just in case. The main theory about Joe's involvement came from Misty's brother Tommy. He told his lawyer that Joe had killed Holly. According to his version, Joe came over to borrow a hunting rifle. When he couldn't find it, he got angry, then shot Holly. Tommy claimed he saw Holly lying still in the backseat of a car, saying she might have been dead even before she was carried out of the trailer. He said Joe drove the body to the river that ran right behind the house, returning without it. Then Misty added some new details of her own. She told investigators that Joe put Holly in a black bag, along with a concrete block, a bat, also a rope. Tommy, for his part, said Joe had threatened to kill him if he didn't keep his mouth shut. But the problem was nothing was ever found in the river. Given how many times Misty had already lied, it was impossible to press charges. As you'll recall in her first story, Misty never even mentioned her cousin coming over that day. While all this was going on August 6, 2009, the story took another strange turn. Around midnight, Ronald was arrested. The charges were burglary, assault. It turned out the whole thing started with a call from Misty. She had called her relatives, her father, plus her brother-in-law, telling them she didn't want to live with Ronald anymore. They showed up to pick her up. That's when the violence started. A fight broke out, which ended with Ronald's arrest. He was taken to jail, but the next morning he was released on bail. The person who came to pick him up was Misty herself. On August 17th, the day Holly would have turned 6 years old, authorities held a press conference. What they said changed the direction of the entire investigation. The sheriff's office announced they were no longer pursuing this stranger abduction theory. They also officially stated that Ronald with Crystal were not suspects. Instead, they declared that they considered Misty Crossland the key figure in Holly's disappearance, explaining that physical evidence found in the home contradicted her confusing account. That same evening, there was a balloon release, also a school supply drive, in Holly's memory. 2 days later, the organization Texas EquiSearch announced that Misty had taken yet another polygraph, with the results being conclusive. She failed, showing a great amount of deception. This just convinced even more people that she was somehow involved. Then, at the end of September, after 7 months of silence, a new, completely insane theory surfaces. People started coming forward, claiming they were at a party on February 9th where Misty was also present. Not only that, they were saying Holly was at that party too, that she accidentally got into some illegal substances, then died. Her body, according to them, was then taken to a local pond. But this raised a logical question. If that was true, why did all these people stay silent for 7 months? Nevertheless, investigators got a tip that this pond was a place called L Pond. They brought in equipment, completely drained it, but there was nothing inside. This confused everyone even more. Why would someone lie about something like that? Was it possible that part of the overdose story was true, but the body was just hidden somewhere else? After this, the sheriff's office released even more information. It turned out that on the night Holly disappeared, nobody could get a hold of Misty on the phone. Phone records showed Ronald had tried calling her 20 times, but she didn't pick up once. What's more, her brother had stopped by the house, but the lights were off, so no one answered the door. This suggested either she wasn't home or that she was sleeping incredibly deeply. On October 6th, the lawyers for Ronald with Misty announced the couple was getting a divorce. 9 days later, the divorce was officially finalized. It was incredibly fast. Ronald even went on Nancy Grace's show to discuss the breakup of his marriage, saying something to the effect of, family problems, everything else just doomed our marriage to fail. After that, life seemed to settle back into some kind of new, weird normal. The Holly case pretty much stopped being in the news. All the outside help, federal agents, private investigators, they all went home. Over 4,000 leads were checked, leaving not a single one that panned out. Ronald, as well as Misty, apparently went back to their old lifestyle, once again using illegal substances. Things got so absurd that Misty's father, Hank Crosland Sr., filed a police report against Ronald, claiming the illegal substances he'd bought from his former son-in-law nearly killed him. One time, Misty, her friends, tried to buy some illegal substances but got robbed instead, which led to yet another investigation. Eventually, both Misty, also Ronald, were arrested for using illegal substances. The police had to make a separate statement just to clarify that these arrests were not connected to Holly's case. But even that didn't stop them. Police got a tip that Misty was trying to sell. This resulted in a month-long undercover operation. In January of 2010, a massive bust went down. Misty, Ronald, Misty's brother Tommy, plus 2 of their friends were all arrested for trafficking illegal substances. It came out that undercover officers had made 7 separate buys from their group, purchasing over 300 pills. For this crime, Misty received the longest sentence, 25 years in prison. Ronald, in addition to the others, were sentenced to 15 years. Then in 2012, while in prison, Misty gave a new interview.
We put Haley on the bus, we did everything we were supposed to do. Ronald brought Haley home. I cooked dinner. I gave her baths. We played. Then we lay down and went to sleep. And then I woke up I don't know why I woke up. I woke up and the kitchen light was on. And I ran to the bathroom. I ran to the kitchen to see what was going on. I thought maybe Ronald was home. He wasn't there. So I ran to my room to get my cell phone to call him. He wouldn't answer his phone over 20 times. Turn around and she's not in her bed. So I'm running around the house freaking out because she's not in her bed, she's not nowhere in the house. And then 5 minutes later, Ronald's pulling down the driveway and he just didn't even really look like he was upset. He just looked like he was more messed up on drugs. And when I called him, like 20 or 30 times I called him, he didn't answer the phone. And then the police come.
And she also had a news story about what happened to Haley, and she was upset that the blame was being put on her.
It has nothing to do with me.
So then, in 2012, while Misty was already serving her 25-year sentence for the drug charges, investigators came to see her in prison. They were obviously hoping that, facing a long time behind bars, she would finally tell the truth about that night. Misty did, in fact, have a news story. Another one. She had apparently decided it was time to change her testimony yet again. During this interrogation, she acted very emotional, complaining that everyone was unfairly blaming her for everything. According to her, she was just a victim of circumstance, repeating over that, "This has nothing to do with me."
I think they were trying to get it back at Ronald, whoever did this. See, what I was told, that Ronald used to sell drugs a lot before we got together, and he owed people money. See, one day we were at this bar, it was his family-owned bar, and I was sitting in the truck. I got out of the truck and started to walk up to Ronald, and this black man was talking to him. And Ronald's like, "I need you to go sit back in the truck." I said, "Why? Why can't I hear?" And the black man said that he knows where Haley is, the Mexicans have her, and if Ronald pays this much money back, then he could go get her on Friday. And that was a long time ago. I don't know who would have took her. I don't understand why they would have took her. It just doesn't make sense to me. I guess I could talk about the abuse that Ronald gave to us. All of us, me, Haley, and Junior, went through abuse with him. He was always messed up on pills. He used to beat us all the time. If the kids would get in trouble and I would tell him to stop, like he smacked his son in the face and I got mad at him. I said, "Don't do that." He started bleeding. He laughed about it. And I got beat up for it because I stuck up for the kids all the time. You know, I had them kids 24/7. I took care of them kids. I gave them baths, took them to school, fed them, done everything with them. Their family didn't do anything. And they're out here putting blame on somebody that they shouldn't be putting blame on. When all I try to do is be a mother figure to them kids because they didn't have a mother. And it hurts me walking around here every day and just knowing that the police even think that.
So that brings us to the present day. Unfortunately, I have to say that to this day, Holly Cummings has never been found. No arrests have ever been made in her case. She remains one of 7 unsolved Amber Alerts in Florida, a case that still baffles everyone. Investigators have made it clear the stranger abduction theory is unlikely. Also that, in their opinion, Misty knows far more than she's willing to say. Holly has never officially been declared deceased, but authorities have stated they do not believe she is still alive. In 2019, investigators put forward their main theory. They believe Holly died from an accidental overdose of prescription drugs, her body then dumped in the river. But without a body, without a confession, making an arrest is impossible. It's impossible to be certain about what really happened that February night. That's why different theories are still floating around. Some people think Misty's brother, Tommy, might have done something to Holly while under the influence. Others suggest Misty herself was in such a state that she just didn't notice something happening. But again, these are all just theories, with zero proof. It's sad to think that Holly would have recently turned 20 years old. The rest of the people in this story have tried to somehow pick up the pieces of their lives. Perhaps one of the most tragic figures is Holly's great-grandmother, Annette. For years, she never lost hope of learning the truth before she passed away. In her home, she kept all the gifts people had sent for Holly. Sadly, she was diagnosed with stage 4 cancer, passing away without ever getting the answers she so desperately wanted. What about Ronald? He was released from prison last year. I gotta say, his behavior in prison was far from model. He was constantly getting in trouble for fighting, unauthorized drug use, possessing weapons. But in October of 2022, he was released early, having served 85% of his sentence. His second chance at freedom didn't last long. On Christmas Day, 2022, he was arrested again. Officers were called to a car crash, where they found Ronald passed out behind the wheel of a running car with a bottle of liquor in his lap. When they finally woke him up, he was heavily intoxicated, barely able to speak. He tried to get out of the car, then sat back down trying to start it again. When an officer ordered him to get out, Ronald refused, which resulted in them having to pull him out by force. This only made him more aggressive. He pushed an officer, even tried to pull the gun from a sheriff's deputy's holster. After a long struggle, he was finally taken into custody. Inside the car, they found plus a bag of. Ronald was sent to the Putnam County Jail on a $185,000 bond, where he remains to this day. Misty is still in prison. Her release date is set for 2031. She also has constant behavioral issues. She's been cited for possessing contraband, verbal threats, a whole lot more. Holly's mother, Crystal, eventually remarried, now goes by the last name Griffiths. She gained custody of Junior. Is known she also had her own troubles with the law, arrests in 2013, also 2014. But after that, it seems she began living a quiet life with her family in Florida. So even after all these years, after all the arrests, confessions, also theories, this case still has far more questions than answers. Why did Misty's story keep changing? Was it lies to cover up something terrible, or just the confusion of a scared girl? Was she at home that night, like she claimed, or was she actually at that rumored party? Perhaps the biggest question is for Ronald. Why, knowing about her weekend antics, did he leave 2 small children with her? It's a decision that still defies logic. Then their wedding, why act so impulsively at such a horrific time? Was it just a strange reaction to grief, or was there something else behind it? We can only hope that someday the person responsible for Holly's disappearance will be held accountable, so the little girl can get the justice she deserves. Because when you put it all together, the illegal substances, the constant lies, the impulsive decisions, the criminal environment, one thing becomes clear. Poor little Holly grew up in an incredibly chaotic, dangerous world. It seems she never really stood a chance. So for real, I'm genuinely interested to hear what you all think. What's your theory? What do you believe actually happened to Holly? If you have any thoughts, maybe you know some details I didn't mention, please share them down in the comments below. I really appreciate you all joining me today. If you got something out of how we broke this case down, please remember to hit that like button so you don't miss out on other real crime stories. Definitely subscribe to the channel. It's completely free. Thanks again, everyone. I'll see you in the next one. Stay safe out there.